We're going to be taking a look at Banish the Snakes, St. Patrick in Ireland from GMT Games. Kevin McPartland and Jerry Shiles are the designers. The very talented Terry Leeds is the artist on this one. Got a nice mounted board. If you like that, I have to lay mine under plexiglass because well, the dry climate where I live tends to make, well, it doesn't tend, it makes them warp. So, but I find if I leave them out for extended period of time with weight on top of them, like, and plexiglass holding everything steady, that they tend to naturalize and then they'll be fine. And that also explains why I've got stuff in the background here. I'm naturalizing some other maps at the same time as this one. Well, we finally got a chance to play this, and this is what a total and complete victory looks like. I had an incredible run of luck, and we were able to win in a 4-player game. You can see each of the pawns here, different colors. They represent a different character in the game. So we're going to take a look at this and just show how this game works, what makes this game stand out. Why is this grabbing table time from me? We'll explain some of that as we get into this. Well, Banish the Snakes is a multiplayer cooperative game, and what the players are going to be attempting to do is they're going to be using their character in order to convert the pagans of Ireland. That is the theme of the game. This takes place in the Middle Ages. And this is a game that I don't know very much about the history of this period. So to me, that struck some interest on my part. Many may not know this, but I actually am a minister of the gospel, and I've been a pastor for a number of years now on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Browning, Montana. And so as a pastor, I find this to be, intriguing. So I wanted to explore this, and that's why it got immediate table time. Plus, as I began to investigate the contents of the game, it just something about it just said, hey, you gotta check this thing out. So how it works is each player is going to get a playmat. These are cardstock. They are going to be calibrated to the color of the various pawns and discs that you're going to use on this playmat to control your character. Each person will be given the control of a character that is defined in the game as a saint. So you got a lot of these guys that I don't know how to pronounce their names. Palladius, the first bishop of Ireland. You got this dude here, the Bishop of Armagh. I don't know how to say. We need a native Irish speaker to explain how to pronounce these names. I have no idea. Anyways, you got a bunch of unpronounceable names of characters, and each of the characters of the game has a special ability printed on the card at the top of the card. And in some cases, they have, like this guy here, it gives his special abilities gives you a bonus action. So when you put him on your playmat, you see that you have your action points here, and you use this disc to mark how many action points you have. You're always going to get a bonus action point. So each player is going to start with a certain saint. That saint will have a special ability. Saint always begins with his zeal in the leftmost position unless the rules stipulate otherwise. There's a couple of them that are an exception. Patrick starts off with one to the right. And I think it was that Palladius dude. I think it's this dude here that he starts 2 to the right, and that is per the rule book. Will stipulate how to do that and that you should do that. So the zeal track here is maybe the more helpful way of understanding zeal is to understand this is your character's life right there. And so as bad things happen to your character during the course of the game, this is going to move to the right. As it moves to the right, it will change the number of actions that your player is allowed to do. So you can see here when it enters this spot, he only have 3 actions instead of the normal 4 per turn. However, with this character, he gives you a bonus, so you always get that 1 bonus. So that's pretty cool with him. Eventually, you're going to end up in this spot here where you only have 2 actions. But what you can do is you can do what's called a final effort. It's a special action that you can do, and it gives you an advantage. But once you're done with that final effort, then he goes and he dies. But when he dies, it's not necessarily a terrible calamity, because you'll get all the rest of the players are going to get an advantage in the area where he dies. There will be a grave that's marked there. And later on, those graves might be flipped over to become a even more valuable relic. Or in the case of this, maybe it's just a useless relic, okay? So in that case, that would be unfortunate because it'd be more important to see, to have his grave in that area than to be able to schlep around a useless 0-point relic. And so what you're going to be doing with your character is you're going to be moving from area to area on the map, attempting to convert the people, which are the green blocks. The people begin as pagans, which has a negative numeric value. When they're converted, they're just turned into what's called the flock. Okay. The goal of the game is to convert everybody, all of the people, into the flock, to convert them to Christian faith. There are some blue markers here that begin as pagans. These are leaders, and they're going to be leaders of different caliber. You're going to use the same blocks, but depending on where they're positioned, they're going to represent different things. For example, in this location, this leader is a chieftain because he's in the chieftain spot. Okay, this is where the chief is. So the chief has direct influence over all of the people in his province. But he himself is influenced by the king of that region here. So the king of Munster is the seat of the king, and so one of these leader markers might be on him. If this guy's a pagan, then if this guy's a pagan, and I wanted to convert this leader, collectively, the numeric values would be combined, making this leader very difficult to convert because he's being influenced by his superior. So that's one of the factors in the game, is how rank manifests itself. And so to show that he's the king, he's put on top of the king's block. There is a higher level of king, the high king. Now, you're supposed to only put maybe like one purple on here, but I put two because he's the high king. So, there's bonus bits inside the box, so why not use them, right? Those blank blocks don't do me any good just being blank. So we went ahead and did that to make him a high king, and he's basically going to influence all of the other regular kings. And I think there's, 4 of them? The king of Munster, Leinster, Ulster, and Connacht. So if I wanted to convert, say we had this situation here, this guy's got a conversion modifier of -4, which makes him a little tough to convert. He's going to be, to that will be added his conversion rate, because his liege lord has got a -3. So it's going to be very hard to convert this guy, is my point. So maybe we want to convert him first, but who's in charge? Who is his lord? Well, we come over here to the great king, and his lord is actually right now this guy, and he's a +2. That's going to, because the high king of Ireland is Christian, it's going to give us an edge in converting the king of Munster. Now, how do we do that? Well, this guy's got a rating of -3, and so you put your there's a little track here you can use to kind of math this out. And after a while, you can kind of do it in your head. He's a -3, but we get to add the high king's value of +2, so slide this to the right, and what we got to do is basically roll higher than this value on the green 6-sided die in order to convert him. So basically anything but a 1 will convert that leader, and that's basically how that works. So that is the goal of the game. And to illustrate the relations between who's who and what they influence, there's this card that each player is going to be given. So you see the people are influenced by their chieftain. They can also be influenced if there's a druid or a church in their area. If there's a relic in that area, a grave in that area, those are both positives, by the way. And if there's a dolmen in their area. Now, dolmens are always negative markers, and they get placed when you try to convert a druid to the faith and you fail. In other words, you roll too low and you're not able to convert him, then a dolmen gets put there, and it makes it harder to convert everybody in that area until you can get rid of that dolmen. In fact, druids, let's talk about them for a second. Druids are extremely important. That's these guys here. They're marked hidden side down, and what they do is they begin the game in an unknown condition. You don't know how difficult they are. Let me just go ahead and reset this area here so you can just kind of see what we're doing. The people in the area, when they begin as pagans, they're always positioned with the lowest to the left and the highest to the right. So everything's always positioned in that fashion. Let's say we begin in this situation here, and we have a character Let's use the one that we've already got set up. We're going to use our Celtic missionary here, and he's going to try to convert this druid. Now, before he does that, maybe he wants to prepare the way to make it more beneficial to himself. In other words, let's give our conversion attempt a leg up. On the back side of the player action card, it shows you the different things you do in your turn and the different kind of actions you can take. And one of them is you can prepare. You can sacrifice an action in order to add a +1 to your conversion die roll. So let's say our guy here is starting the game, and we're sitting here with 5 actions because of his bonus. He's at full zeal. Let's say we just decide we're going to burn 2 actions to add +1 for each of those actions to our conversion attempt. So we're getting a +2 to our conversion attempt. We come back over here. We have no idea what this guy is, but now we flip him over because we're committed. He's a -3. We're probably going to succeed at this. So he's a -3. We get a +2 because of his conversion rate. There are no other modifiers. And so we roll our 6-sided die. Uh-oh, we rolled the cloverleaf. Well, the cloverleaf doesn't hurt us in this case because we rolled equal to that value. We didn't roll less than it, which was not possible. So in effect, we basically just wasted our action. But we can go again. So we decided to go again. And this time we rolled a 2, which is barely enough to convert that druid to the Christian faith. Now, when you convert a druid, you simply remove him. He gets mixed back in the pool. You shuffle them all up because they will come back into play. And some of these guys are really tough. -5s and 6s are in there. But now you've got an empty spot. What should we do with that? We have one more action left. So maybe what we'll do is we'll build a church there. The churches come in multiple stages. A disc is a level 0 church. 0 for the disc. Easy to remember. A cube, later on, one of the actions you can do is you can improve a church, a pre-existing church. By one action, you can put a cube there. Now it's a level 1 church, and a level 1 church gives you a +1 to any conversions in that area. So you can see how this can kind of build on you. And then after that, you have level 2 churches, which is these, they look like Monopoly hotels. And then there's one mega church that you can build. That's the most powerful one, but there's only one of those in the game. There's a finite number of these markers that you can use in the game. You cannot improve a church and more than one level per round. So when it's his turn, he can build the one church, but now he can't use another action to improve it. Another player, the next player in sequence, if he happened to be in the same area or move in that area, he could burn an action to improve it one level, but he can't spend a second action to do it again. Another player would have to do that during their round. And so that's basically how the game is going to flow. Now, at the same time all of this is going on, there is this track here, and I'll have to set up the game to show you how it begins, but there's this track by which paganism in England is tracked, and as this marker moves down, it's going to eventually end the game. And how the game will end is when this reaches this spot here, the game instantly ends. What's going to move that is events from this event deck, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. The other way the game will end is if you convert every one of the people to the Christian faith. If all of these are flipped over to its green side, the game instantly ends. And you win. That's the best way that you can win. That's going to be pretty rare to achieve. It's pretty hard to do that. The other way the game ends is if the event deck is exhausted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video here. I'm going to reset the game, show you what it looks like at the start, and then we'll walk through a few turns, and I'll show you the really cool thing that happens with the event cards. Okay, I've gone ahead and reset the game. This is what it looks like at setup time. Obviously, your setup may vary because of the quality of leaders. That's going to be completely randomized. You're going to need a couple big draw cups to draw out the people, the green blocks from. Memory serves are something like 44 of those, maybe half as many of the blue leaders. Now the leaders, drawing for the leaders is a bit of an inexact science. Okay, you're supposed to draw the block and not look at the Christian side of it, because let me show you this guy here. This pagan leader is a -1, so he's pretty easy to convert. He's not devoted pagan. You flip him over, though, he's not a +1 Christian. He's actually a very committed Christian, +3, very powerful leader for you to have. As you draw these, you're not supposed to look at the Christian side, but how can you tell? Right? I mean, both sides of the block feel exactly the same. It's not like drawing a counter out of a cup. So what I've found is I just try to draw it, look very, very quickly so as to, if I see the value, I put it back in and redraw. It's just, that's my only nit with the game. I like the idea of the blocks, but it makes it somewhat difficult to do what the designer intends there. So, anyways, and you're going to be drawing these things not just at setup. It's going to happen throughout the game because leaders are going to die. When they die, for example, if the king dies, he's going to be randomized by one of the chieftains in that area according to a random die roll. The die roll range is located beneath the chieftain. So if you rolled a 1 to 4, this guy would be promoted, and then you would fill his spot by drawing something random from the cup. And out it goes. So the game is set up. I've got 4 saints. So because there are 6 saints, 4 of them, and I'm using the historic ones, at start ones. So the only 2 I did not draw, I just randomized it. And the only 2 I didn't draw are the 2 that St. Patrick and the other guy that start with less zeal than the full amount. And so because I didn't start with them, they are randomized into the deck. So we are ready to go. We're going to have this guy go first. The bishop here is going to be who is the active player. Whoever's turn it is will be given that particular token as a reminder, and probably should be handed the dice because they're going to be doing their dice things and all of that. The first thing you do on your turn, just follow the instructions on your player action card. This shows you what you do during your turn on one side, and on the other side is the modifiers and the influence diagram. This is very helpful. There's no need for any other play aid. Having said that, there are some procedures. For example, when people get removed from an area and need to be replaced, or when a leader gets removed and needs to be replaced, there is a procedure in the rulebook that you will probably need to reference again and again in your first game until you get the hang of it. Once you get the hang of it, you won't need to reference that anymore. But I found that my first couple of games, the first game was kind of a mess because I was getting lots of things wrong and I decided to reset. My second game, I pretty much had to look up that rule, I think, every time until the very end. My third, fourth, and fifth games haven't needed it. So that's how that works. So the first thing that's going to happen on the Bishop of Armagh's turn is he's going to draw a card from the deck. Hold on a second, I forgot to mention Arthur, King of the Britons, begins in the key card slot per the setup. It's not clearly indicated on the card itself. I kind of wish it was and make it easier to fish out. I wish there was some kind of distinguishing marker on its face that says, hey, this is important, set this aside. It can and will get shuffled back into the deck at some point, but it would make it easier to find. The other cards, there's some other cards that say from Scotland, from Strathclyde, and from England. These get set aside and put in these stacks. These are pretty much terrible events. These are really harmful things that will happen to Ireland. And they're set aside at the beginning, but as paganism advances in England and Scotland, then once this marker moves down, this flips over because it's now Scotland pagan. All the Scotland cards get shuffled into what remains of the draw deck, and on it goes. When paganism reaches the Strath, then Strathclyde marker goes pagan. All the Strath cards go into what remains of the deck, and so forth. When you get down to the end, and England goes pagan, and these cards get shuffled in, it's going to be really the severity of this begins to mount. The crisis begins to mount because you have fewer cards in the draw deck. So we're going to begin with the event deck constituted as the rules stipulate. We're going to draw our first card off the deck, and we're going to examine it. Now, you examine the card from top to bottom, and sometimes there will be something up here that you implement right away. Almost every card has an event, and sometimes multiple versions of an event. For example, you see this card, this attack from Scotland. There are no less than 3 different versions of the same event, and what version you execute depends on what card is sitting in the key card slot. because Arthur, King of the Britons is here. If we were to draw this from Scotland card, for example, you would actually execute the weakest version of the event, which is the bottommost one. You see the blue arrow? It lines up with the blue box where that event resides. And so this is a really cool mechanic because the different kinds of events in here, some of them are really helpful to you, some are devastating, some are somewhere in between. And instead of this very granular approach to events, this provides a more graduated approach. So there's something really good that's happened. And what this ends up doing is offsetting the severity of a really bad event. So say there's a really bad event that happens to be on the top of the deck. It's not going to kill you right away because the pre-existing event was a good one. And so you'll have a weaker version of a bad event perhaps. Or if there's a good event, it's a really good effect on the bottom. Bad stuff's usually at the top. Good stuff's usually at the bottom. So on this one here, we're going to advance paganism in Great Britain by 1 square, which is unfortunate because that's going to send Scotland into paganism. And all these are going to get shuffled into the deck, which I can't do while I'm holding the phone. This will also go in with them because this would go on top of the Scotland pile. That goes in there. Otherwise, normally they go into the discard pile. Then the event, once it's executed, slides over, and this will be the gauge for the next player's turn. When he draws a card off of there, then we're going to look at the orange level of that particular event. Now, some cards in here are going to say keeper, or some of them will be just another saint. If that happens, you can keep up to 2 cards, unless you're playing 1, 2, and 3-player game, in which case each player would be able to hold a total of 3 keepers. So if that were to happen, the rules are not entirely clear on this, but from what I surmise is if I draw a keeper out of there, I simply keep it, and this card stays where it is, because it's going to affect the next event that comes through. In other words, unless there's something that actually is an event that gets resolved, the key card will stay right where it is. Once that event gets triggered, then the key card slides up, this card slides over, and that's how the thing progresses. It's a really clever mechanic, and I love how that works. All right, so we've done the event. Now I've got 4 actions for my bishop. So I'm going to spend 2 actions to evangelize. That's going to give me a +2 on my modifiers. I've got another saint in the same area as me. Sorry about the glare. This guy gets +1 to convert actions if present in the same area. So this is kind of cool. I set it up, and your starting characters can set up wherever they like, unless there's a special rule dictating otherwise, which there aren't for these guys. So I'm going to try to convert this druid. And of course, he's the worst one in the game. So I'm going to have a -6 to contend with, which makes him impossible unless I've evangelized, which I have, and that is good. So I've evangelized twice. I've developed relationships with this druid. I've been working with him, established some friendships, and then we also have another guy in the same area that's been, talking with him as well. So now we basically got a 50-50 chance of success, and we rolled a big fat 3, which does not get us anywhere. Now I can take one more stab at him, but if I succeed, then I'm going to leave that spot empty, and it may cost us if we do that. Well, here we go. That'll get her done. But the reason I wanted to have 1 action left over is because once you convert the guy, he gets shuffled into the others, and then you can build maybe a church with your last action, protecting that spot, because the next event, we're going to shuffle all these up. Maybe the next event is going to plop a druid back into a spot where there is no church. So you always want to have, whenever possible, have a church there. Another good strategy is, it's not always a good idea to congregate your bishops or your saints, because when something bad happens in an area, it usually is going to affect your character in that area in a negative way. And so everybody could get hurt at once. And that's not terribly helpful. Death is not a terrible thing, okay? But if everybody is weakened, that's going to set everybody back. But remember, when you die, that's not a bad thing. You're going to get a positive modifier there. You will probably, by the time your character dies, have a keeper card where it's a saint. It's another card, looks just like this, another character. Hold on to that, so when this guy dies, the guy that you're holding will take his place. If you don't have one of those, another one of the options that you can do is you can take or give a card to another character in the same area. Give or take a card. That is an action that you can undertake. Some of the other cards that you can pass to one another are the Gifts of the Holy Spirit cards, which are special advantage cards introduced into play by way of events. The events will eventually put some of those into play, and basically it just adds another ability to your character. And with most of the Gifts of the Holy Spirit, they're also going to impact your successor. So if this guy dies, he's succeeded by somebody else, the Gift of the Holy Spirit will work with that other person as well. If you don't have another character and your character dies, you can flip this over, and it becomes, I think the term was an acolyte, and you're still going to be able to do things, but you're not going to have, the special ability until you draw one of those cards or somebody gives you a saint card, and at which time you can immediately put that into effect without spending an action. And that's pretty much how the game flows. So you're going to spend your actions doing conversions, building churches. The order of business, and this is a really important rule, is you need to deal with the druids right away, because as long as there's a druid in that area, you can't convert anyone. You can't convert the chieftain, the king, the high king. Nobody can be converted until the druid has been dealt with. And so for the king of the region, you have to get rid of all the druids. Right? To deal with the High King, he's influenced by the region in which the High King's seat is, which is O'Neill, I think is how you say that. And so this particular location, you've got to get rid of that particular druid. To impact this leader, you got to get rid of all three of these druids. And that's kind of why I set things up the way I did, so I could start working on this guy to get at the High King, start working on the two druids here, get to the third one, and start to build some momentum. Momentum will be something that you gain over the course of time, but for beginners, that's a big rule. That's why you need to set yourself up for success in dealing with the druid leadership. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop, because I think we've got a pretty good idea how this game works. I'm Joel Toppin. This is Banish the Snakes. It is St. Patrick in Ireland, a cooperative game that plays very well solitaire, if you enjoy that. I think this is really fun as a co-op game, though, playing with other people. And you should definitely check this one out. The theme is very timely. St. Patrick's Day, at the time I'm recording this, is only next week away. And so I'm hoping to get together with some gamers from my church, and we're going to take this for a test drive as well. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please click and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy video content like this, as we like to post videos on how to play, do reviews of various things. We appreciate your subscriptions. Take care and have a wonderful day.